But now that we understand that we need, as engineers, we need to control particles, we need to know where those particles are going through. Basically, there are only two ways to avoid infection. There are only two ways that inside an operating theater, now we're inside an operating theater, the patient can get infection. One is by contact. What do we mean by contact? That means that we don't know how the doctors, professionals, medical equipment is sanitized, is clean, or actually how they clean their hands. It's basically they don't clean their hands properly, and actually they touch the wound of the patient. You are able to transfer that bacteria and put it to create an infection. This is something that I won't want to put. It's not my fault. It's not on my way of my design. I don't want to be taking care. We should. I will bring that back to you. But let's isolate that issue onto one side where we are as engineers. We are there in airborne particles, in those particles that are moving all around in a turbulent way, probably, and they are sitting as a possible taxi for that bacteria. So this is very important. So far in Australia, I haven't found, and I always try to say this to everyone, I'm not an expert, I'm a messenger. I'm only trying to build social spaces that we can talk. I'm pretty sure I see some names here that you have been designing or working with operating theaters for a longer time even than myself. And you know that haven't found yet a correct guideline or standard or some kind of document that actually leads you to a better design when we're talking about infection control. And this is one of the main issues. Why should we targeting infection control? I get a little bit upset. For example, I have been in so many conferences or webinars around Australia and around the world, but when I get to one of the biggest events, I would rather not to mention on this area on hospital design, and I go and they bring all the best speakers around the world, and we have people talking about how beautiful is the new facade of the Royal Children's Hospital, or how beautiful is I'm going to be saving energy with the cogeneration system. I'm an engineer. I want to save the world. Yeah, I want actually to avoid CO2 pollution. But regarding an hospital, the most important thing in hierarchy has to be infection control. And this is the problem. I have seen many projects in the tender market when they are actually taking money out of the budget of the operating theaters to actually get a better entry, a better lobby, or to do something. I will show you some image that you will get quite intact. So these kind of slides, they're going to be moving. Don't stress too much. This is something that I also bring to the mechanical consultant most of the time, to the architect. This is something that the medical sector would understand 100% better than us. And the thing is, for example, if I go for a new hospital, and in this new hospital, by the way, Australia is one of the few countries in the world that we're building new facilities. When I say big mega facilities, probably like the Royal Adelaide Hospital, like Bendigo Hospital a few years ago. In Europe and probably in America also, they are retrofitting all facilities. But let's say that we are here in Australia and I go and have a chat with a team of mechanical consultants and they're designing 10 operating theaters for this big facility. And when we got and see what are the current guidelines that advice in the market and they understand the issue, probably after the presentation, they say it has to be a new grade on budget around 50%. So you have 10 operating theaters, that means I have to spend $500,000, $500,000 more. I don't have the budget, it's gonna be over, blah, blah, blah. I don't wanna be too bureaucratic, but if we get builders involved and DNCs, probably design and construction projects, in my opinion, they are in some cases destroying the market, but let's not go too deep to that. Is the real truth around this is what is the real cost. So in Australia, this is all a statistic. I've been trying to get to this person, Marley Cruikshank and John Ferguson. Probably I'm going to get now by the Australian Infection Control Organization. But the truth is we are not keeping that statistic. And in Australia, the last we got is we were getting about 168,000 surgical site infections. I'm not talking about hospital-acquired infection. That is all the hospital facility. I'm talking surgical site infection, that infections coming from the operating theater itself. So, and that's already costing us about 20.7 million Australian dollars to the taxpayers. And in the best case scenario, the person stay alive. We are not counting death. We are not counting how many people they need to cut their leg. For example, if you get an infection in bones, in orthopedic surgery, if you get a bacteria inside your bone, it's almost impossible to remove, as far as I understand. And in most of the cases, they need to cut your leg or they need to cut whatever you have on the wrist. So keep that in mind. How we get to the 20.7 million? When a person gets infected, a surgical site infection is defined different ways, but let's say the easiest one is when you have an open wound, you close it and you get an infection near to that wound 30 days after you have been released from the hospital or from the operating theater. So how we get to the 20.7 million? Because you need to consider what they call in the hospital facility, hospital industry, additional bed times. So how many days the person of the patient has to spend on bed with nurses, electricity, and all the possible charges you get because you have a person there. So this is state of consideration. This is when I'm trying to put the mind into the designers and the architects. I know, and when we're building a new guidelines, I'll tell you that at the end, but I know it will take probably 2 years more. So we need to take the, let's say, the impersonal or the impersonality around this. When we do a risk study, we say someone going to get infected, someone probably die. But what happens if that person is you, if that person is your mother, your daughter? Would you spend the $50,000 more? So this is a kind of question that I will say the responsibility is shared by everyone on this committee, everyone on this, in this meeting, everyone. From the facility manager trying to request something better, from the surgeons to understand how the air conditioning system works. And this is the bit I have been trained to the surgeon. I have been doing this kind of presentation to surgeons sometime, and I say, I'm rising here only to tell you that probably I'm going to tell you that your infections is because of my fault, not because of you. So keep that in mind.